managing your own property. Hey, what's up guys, Dan Jaridi here, hope you're all well. So I'm doing you a video all about should you manage your own properties? And this is really fitting this week because I have just gone through the last weekend and the last few days of what we call the student changeover, which is typically the busy weekend between August and September. Everyone moving out and everyone moving in, and you go through all of the cleaning, any of the repairs, any of the redecorations to make those houses suitable for the guys moving in within days. And there tends to be 2 weekends a year where this really does kick off. The July-August changeover, and then the big one, which is the August-September changeover. And every year when I go through this, I seem to have more and more properties. But the last 2 years, the last 2 changeovers, have definitely gone through it in a completely different context. Now, historically, I have always had either a letting agency or staff to manage this process for me. And even though I definitely was involved in the early days, I very, very quickly had staff do this for me. And at one stage I owned a letting agency, and then after that we definitely engaged with a letting agency in some degree to manage this process for us. But when I sold business 1, business 2 and semi-retired, I took on a much smaller portfolio to do it all myself. Now I say all myself, technically I'm not really on my own. I have builders, electricians, plumbers, cleaners and general tradespeople to help me with the actual tasks that need doing. I'm just there to check the students in and make sure everything is working really well. But this changeover has been really tough because, as you all know, the last 18 months I've been buying loads of properties because there has been some really good deals. And the reason being is because we hit the bottom of the market back in April last year. And the ripple effect of that meant was some cracking deals. Now, not every deal that I bought was a student house, but I definitely have picked up some super deals. And some of these deals I've talked about, and I'm going to be talking about some more of them because not all of them have been refurbished or even let yet, but a big chunk have. And if I actually look, it's probably nearly 5 times what I had to check in last year. Now that's a mixture of adding new properties, but also some students stayed for 2 years. So this year was what I would call a really big changeover. Now don't get me wrong, there are moments through the process where I really think, what am I doing? Why am I here meeting the tenants and going through all of this when I could be paying someone else to do it, or a letting agency could be doing it for me? Now, the old question, should you manage your own properties or should you put them to a letting agency, is one which is heavily debated and you never ever quite find the right answer. For me, I definitely play on both sides of the fence. I don't play for both sides of the team, I play on both sides of the fence. What does that mean? So I definitely use letting agencies to find me tenants, and that tends to be either commercial tenants or sometimes student houses when they're in between student years. But typically the houses that I own long term are either rented through word of mouth or through my own advertisement through the correct channels for students. And really the 2 busiest times on managing these types of properties are the finding the tenant and checking them in. And apart from that, it's pretty easy. We tend to do our properties up to a pretty good standard. That means that the maintenance and the issues that arise are pretty much few and far between. And when they do come up, the guys who did the refurbs are the same guys I use for the maintenance. They can go in there and they know exactly how to sort it out. Now, this also has a lot of other things at play. Your desirability to actually be involved in the property, your location versus the property. Now, properties that are literally more than 5 miles from where I live, they are all managed. I don't get involved in the manage, and I pay anything from 5 to 10% plus VAT for the management, which is quite high. But the peace of mind and the fact that I don't have to go to these properties, and some of them I haven't seen for some time, does actually give me a far better return than it would be if I was to go there and save the money on the management fee. So there is no one size fits all to this answer. But what I would say is the properties that pay me the most are definitely the ones that I manage myself. And the reason being is because in terms of a fee, the fee would be the same, but the cash margin difference would be quite substantial. When you're talking about 10% on a property that produces £36,000 a year, that is a massive chunk of cash to hand over to someone to manage a property. And that's one of many. And I think that I can manage these properties within my lifestyle, within my geographical location, and within my desire to get involved quite easily. Don't get me wrong, 2 times of the year, I'm pretty busy. You won't get me on the phone. If you do, I'll be really, really ratty. I'll be running around trying to get these properties ready for the new students. But it is a pretty small price to pay. We're talking about a few days every single year where I have to get my head down and really focus on these properties and these tenants for what is effectively a really easy ride for the remainder of the year. And in terms of savings, if you look at the gross rental income across these student houses, and if you were to give them to a letting agency and let them manage them for say 10%, you would be paying what is a really good salary equivalent to someone managing these properties. Now, my experience is that no one can manage these better than yourself. And that's nothing against any letting agency or any member of staff. There's just a great link of communication between the lead tenant and the individual who owns them, which is me, but they also have the contact details of my builders. They understand that if they call them and they come out and it's not something which is an issue with the property, but it's something they've caused, they'll have to pay for that service. There's also some key things that I instill in how I manage these properties, which makes my life easier. One is I only ever deal with the lead tenant. There can be 3, 4, 5, 6 students in one house. I only deal with the lead tenant. All of the communication, all of the queries go through that one tenant. That means I am literally dealing with one person per house. That really limits the amount of texts and calls and emails that you will get. Secondly, I understand the market, and I know that if sometimes you give them an inch, they will take a mile. I am here to give people a great house and absolutely great service, but I'm not here to do their homework, and I'm definitely not here to do things like take their bins out, cook their meals for them. But if you give them the opportunity, they will ask you to do that. So set the boundaries and make them very, very clear. That way, your life will become a lot easier. And then it means that you can manage a proportion or a sector of your portfolio at great ease and stay firmly in control of what is probably the biggest chunk of your income. Now, you could use this strategy or philosophy for any sector. It doesn't have to be the student part of your portfolio. It could be the commercial. It could be the residential. For me, I do it, 1, because of the geographical location. It's really close to where I live. 2, because it's the market that I understand probably the most. And 3, I find it really easy to find tenants for. Now, when you've got the other properties like commercial or single residential or even serviced accommodation, those are the ones I don't want to get involved in. 1, I don't really know where to find the tenants, and the avenues that I use for students aren't the right avenues to find a tenant, say, for commercial. Service accommodation, the last thing I want is to be checking people in at 10 o'clock at night and dealing with people who have gone out really drunk and lost their keys and all of that faff. So I don't really play in that market, but where I do play in that market, I have a trade in business, or I have a way of managing it through another person. So it's something that generates a really good income for me, and actually the return on investment versus time is quite good because I don't spend any time on it. However, it definitely isn't something that I want to rinse and repeat on a massively large scale. Where I see the easiest opportunities is the secondary location commercial tenants, the service-led businesses in relatively small but cheap to run and cheap to rent, and more importantly, business rates relief exempt type of properties. These are the tattooists, the hairdressers, the nail salons, the beauticians, the dog trainers, the coffee shops, all of those sorts of things which pay a really good rent, tend to be a new business, not massively strong covenant, but you get a really good operator who builds a great sustainable business. It can be in these properties for 3, 4, 5 years, which makes the management of the students look a lot harder than these types of properties. And one of the things I really like to do is I like to buy a commercial unit and split it up into smaller units to get lots of little businesses, diversifying that single property and my portfolio in that sector. But with commercial, it is pretty easy to manage. And I tend to really only use a tenant find service through a letting agency for that type of business. So what is the correct answer? I'm afraid there really isn't one. If you are fairly new, rent to rent, that type of strategy, I would say do everything yourself. But if you've got multiple things going on, or you are looking for more time, it's time to start to look on other ways to manage your portfolio. If you've got developments and a buy-to-let portfolio, the last thing you want to do is be bogged down with trying to find a tenant or checking someone in, and you've got a development issue knocking at your door, which did happen to me over the last few days. I'm not going to lie. These things do happen. But I think in context, if you take a view on your own portfolio and your own desire, and the fact that you don't have to do any of the work yourself, get the trades in to do the cleaning, to do the repair work, all of that sort of stuff, then you can relatively manage these properties easy. And my advice would be, depending on where you are, if you're now either at the top or you're on your way down, or you're at a plateau where you just want to have an easy life, maybe manage a handful of those properties in the same sector yourself and get other people and other businesses doing it for you. But look, that's it from me. I hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.